Still not seeing.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. And I'm just looking for our thing
I'm not seeing it, but
to pull up. There we are. I see it. Okay. So, big topic right now.
right.
Change. Changes.
Actually, what I'm thinking more of is the tired after you and I talking about our exhausting weekends.
I know, but it really goes back to because it goes back to good morning, Yasmin. When did I just talk about change last Thursday? I guess I did on my living the shift.
Yes, you
Resisting
did.
change. So, that's what started but this is a really big topic because it's pervasive through everything right now. And so we came to this because what I was talking about on Thursday was being resistant to change overall, right? And then sort of at the end, I was like, oh my God, there's this whole other topic that came in. And then you and I were talking. I was like, oh, this is perfect because it fits all this other stuff that we're talking about.
Right.
And that had to do with, why people are begging for change and yet resisting it, right?
Exactly. And we talked about how really all they want is their symptoms to go away. They don't really want to get to the bottom of what's causing the symptoms. And I used to criticize Western medicine for, all they do is treat the symptoms. And you go to the doctor, and if they can't write a prescription or do a procedure, they can't help you. And I used to just think it was the energy of Western medicine, but that's what the customer demands. They don't really want to make major changes. They just want the symptoms to go away,
Right.
because they just want to stay where they've been comfortable or believe that they're comfortable.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. I always laugh when somebody makes an appointment to come and see me. It comes into a session and I say, okay, so what's going on? And they say, oh, nothing. Everything's pretty good. Except you came in to see me for a reason.
Right.
Not just because you like talking to me, because you could have just texted or called, And it's usually when we get to that point where we decide, and I had this huge conversation with my husband about this morning, we get to, which was really funny, by the way, because I'd forgotten to post, as we were talking about before I get online. I'd forgotten to post last night. I haven't been on my computer like all weekend.
Right.
And this morning we were walking. Good morning, Sandy. This morning my husband and I were walking and we got into this discussion about, of course, that was all related to what you and I are talking about today. Like I didn't even think about it until after I got back. And then I'm like, oh, look, this is exactly what we're talking about is we get to a certain point of comfort, right? So we get to this place of comfort and the ego does the whole, like the evils, thing, right?
Right. Right.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, if I stay on this path, well, then I'm going to do this. But even though I know it doesn't serve me and blah, 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 I'm going to hold on to this because I do know it. And I'm afraid of what I don't know. Right.
Right.
But then we fabricate all of this other stuff. So think about this. And I'm only putting this in here because this will go into the whole too tired thing. We fabricate all this energy around keeping our comfort boxes in place for the ego. Right.
Right. Right.
We put so much effort and energy into maintaining, like we're constantly treading water in like 50 feet of water with like big waves, right? And instead of going with the flow and going with the current that's going to take us to someplace we can stand and not have to worry about that. But then when we're faced with the idea of changing, we go, oh, I'm too tired.
Right.
I'm just too tired.
That takes too much effort.
Not realizing that what's taking the effort is holding yourself where you are.
Right. Right. Yeah. Or, another visual I like to think of is, you're treading water, and you're barely keeping your head out of the water. And all of a sudden you realize you're like in 2 feet of water. And all you have to do is stand up.
Yeah, well,
And
that's exactly right. Yes, totally.
yeah. So it's just, and like we say with our program, it's just never what you think it is. It's typically the opposite. It's like,
right.
yeah,
So when you think about, like, when you think about that idea of, well, I'm putting all this energy into treading water instead of moving into a place where I'm a much more comfortable, or instead of just putting my feet down, right?
right.
Or moving to a place that's much more easy for me. I'm exhausted from that, but then I'm projecting it onto the idea of change, because the ego goes, oh, well, that's just too scary because there's too many things we have to change then.
Well, and then the ego gets you all invested in, oh, but you can't do this, and oh, but this.
Right.
And so you're distracted, and in thinking that I have to do all these things that the ego's talking about, when it's really not what you think.
Yeah. And then once, like, I remember, and I've talked about this in different contexts before, but I had a year with, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, where I literally had probably 5 or 6 of my clients within like a 4-month period, all had their worst nightmare happen.
Right.
And there was an explosion in their life. They cried, they screamed, they whatever, there was like I said, there was like this period of time, it was like every time my phone rang, my stomach was like, oh God, it's another conversation like this. And it wasn't that I was judging that. It was just a matter of holding somebody's hand because it's intense, right?
Right.
Except when they get through it, it goes fast when you roll with it, right? When you allow it and you stand down, put your feet in the damn sand, right? And you allow the current to flow by, or you allow yourself to follow the current in. And yes, you're letting go of a ton of stuff, but then it flows through quickly. Yes, it's intense, it's quick, and it's usually very productive. And then literally within days or weeks or months, you're looking back and going, oh, well, that was never as bad as I thought it would be.
And it was the best thing that could have ever happened.
And it was the best thing that could have happened.
Right.
And so, yeah, and I had a major shift like that, a couple months ago, and it was intense, and it was like a very intense, like, week or two for me. And then it was like, okay, yeah, nobody see the bigger picture of this, and all right, well, let it clear up. And I'm somebody who's really conscious of looking at that. So it's interesting though, we put so much energy to holding something in place where it doesn't serve us. And that's what's tiring us out.
Well, and what I think that it is simply appeasing the ego by allowing that to stay, okay, I'm just going to stay small, or I'm just going to stay the same. And we know in observing everything around us that change is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't want it, it is inevitable. The days change, the weather changes,
and continuous. Yeah, continuous.
All right. And the only thing you can trust is that it will change.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's the only constant.
Right. That's the constant.
Change is the only constant. Right. Yes.
Right. So it's riding that horse versus riding the trend to stay the same.
Yeah. And we have gotten so embroiled in fear. Like, we have let fear and fear comes from this projection of something that has not happened yet, right? It's the ego saying, well, this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen. But then it's like, but all of this could happen too. That would be 1,000 times even better, right?
Right. Yep.
And so this is what we tire ourselves out with in the back. And I can't tell you, we got to this conversation because how many conversations I am having with people right now, and for months now, right? And I'm looking in the mirror saying, where am I doing it myself? Of course, I had my big explosion a couple months ago, and it's been like one change after another. And I still feel like there's something big, but I feel like there's also something really big collectively coming up, which is why we're pressing our own buttons so that we can clear out all this other stuff to be able to deal with that.
Right.
And so, the thing is, when you get to this place and you're saying, I'm really good morning, Michael. when we get to a place where we are completely deciding we're staying, like, oh no, like, and this is what we do. And this is what we do. And I'm not saying this with judgment. This is what I observe, because I have a lot of people who come in, people I've had like sessions with, students, friends, and it's like part of being committed to seeing expanded consciousness is seeing the bigger picture, right? So I see the bigger picture. And of course, it's always easier to see it for somebody else than yourself, right?
Right. Right. Always.
Even though they are just a reflection of you. So what I do is I let myself see the objective third party thing. And then after I deal with that, I look and go, so where am I hiding that from myself?
Right. Right. Which is perfect.
Right. It is. I always laugh and go, well, I loved getting paid to do my self work. Right. So,
Right.
so, anyway, but the thing is, somebody will come to me and they will, they'll say, I really am tired of this. I'm tired of my life. I'm tired of whatever, XYZ. I'm tired of my job, my relationship, blah, blah, blah. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of my illness and whatever. And it's like, okay, so then let's talk about changing it. Yeah, no, I want to change it. I totally want to change it. And then when you start giving them suggestions on the things to change, oh no, I can't do that. No,
But the
I
buts
can't.
come in.
Right. And typically it has to do with a lot of things that we have anchored in ourselves as motivation through fear. Right. So
Right.
it's
Right.
stuff like this. Now my job is paying my bills, and if I change my job and what I do, I don't believe in myself in the way that I could support myself doing what I really want to do or what I'm being pulled to do. So therefore, I'm just going to do my job, and then I'm going to explore what my heart really like wants to do on my spare time. But then unfortunately, what happens is that builds. Then what'll happen is expanded consciousness will put this crap in your face and say, okay, well, then we're just going to take up more and more and more of your time in this job
Right.
that you're really not happy in, until it explodes and you'd say, I can't do this anymore. Right.
Right. Right.
Or you get fired or laid off or whatever. And you're forced to go in that direction. Right. So that's one thing.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah. So like, I can't tell how many I've had this conversation with. It's like, oh no, I can't because of that. Oh no, because I have this house I have to support. I have a family I have to support. I have to support myself. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, well, how about you say, I will create a situation where what supports me also supports this easily.
Right.
Even more
Yep.
easily and in a way that's more fun. But we're so non-trusting. We don't believe we deserve it. We don't believe we're worthy of it. We don't trust it. All the more reason to take our course.
That's right.
There's the shameless self-plug.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can't separate it out, because it's all part of that expanded consciousness, and that allowing, and that embracing, and that identifying what you're unconsciously holding yourself back, and it's trying to show up in where you're spending all that energy. It's trying to give you those messages and say, we're here to show you what you need to change, not what you need to focus on more.
right.
And I think that's where we expend that energy and say, yeah, but I'm too tired.
Right. And then so what the ego says, oh, but it'll be even more tiring to have to change.
Right. Well, because you're assuming that you'll have to do that and this.
Right.
Instead of just allowing that to fall away.
Right. And that's our biggest thing that's the biggest cliff for us to jump off of. Right. And I think back in my life thus far, at every time I was guided to do something that was to the mind absolutely logically crazy, and to many other people crazy and spontaneous and impulsive, compulsive or whatever. But when I felt it like in here, and the voice was clear and said, do this, even though it made no sense in so many other areas, every time I followed that, things worked out a bajillion times better than I could have ever imagined.
Right. Right.
And
Well,
yes, there
and
was discomfort in the unknowing. But the thing is, and I do trust, but then it's funny because I'm like, I know there's something I'm not looking at right now because otherwise it wouldn't be in my face.
right. Well, we talk a lot about endpoint creation, and that is holding just that vision of, or the energy of what it is you want to create, and then let go and allow the universe to use its miracles and amazing energy to bring that to you in the quickest way possible. But you have to trust that and let it go to fill that in, because if you sit there and judge and try to control every step, it's not going to happen
Right.
as
And
easily, as rapidly, and as big as it could. You're limiting yourself.
yes. And we also always limit ourselves. This is something that I was looking at this weekend too. We also always limit ourselves through setting our endpoint creation at things,
Right.
because things are
Right.
part of the illusion of this creation, right?
Mhm.
And so we do all these vision boards, we want all these things, and it's not bad to want all these things, right? But all of the things are what we imagine are actually supportive manifestations to an energy or
Right.
an emotion,
Yeah.
right? So if we shifted to our endpoint creation of, I live my happiness, I live in bliss all the time, and I can do vision boards to say, and this is what I feel like, what I know of now, these are the things that help to support me living that, right?
Right.
And
Or a
I'm gonna,
consequence of me being in that energy.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Instead of my endpoint creation is this job.
Right. Or this vacation
Right.
that has a beginning and an end.
Right. And of course, but if we set the endpoint creation at, I mean, what a great, maybe that's a workshop for us to do, a whole new way of doing vision boards.
Right.
Right.
That's
Like
true.
that we do the whole thing through energy, through the energy, like your endpoint creation is actually the energy or the emotion, right? The bliss, living the bliss, living in passion, living in such fulfillment and
Mhm.
saturation. And then all of the things you put in are just what you, and setting the intention of, this is what I believe helps to support me in that energy. And I'm going to also leave it open for, it's almost like you put a big crystal, like crystal quartz ball in the middle to say, and I'm going to allow everything else beyond that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just a tiny little reflection of possibility. And I'm going to allow everything else. Like, think of how powerful that is.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in ways you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's the magic. That's the miracles that people are looking for. And you can't, you limit yourself unless you just let go and allow that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, if we did, okay, my endpoint creations are happiness, fun, joy. They're all the same. They're all different parts of the same
Bliss.
thing.
Right.
Yeah. Bliss, laughter. Like, I mean, that's a thing, but it supports the bliss, right? It's all like the
Right.
things that, and then you start stepping down. Well, see, that's a completely different way of creating. Right. And we're not used to, boy, that's a whole new, there's a whole new course we just created right there.
Right.
But, when we come from, because the feeling is presence, the feeling is more of the especially, and the more open the feeling, the more relaxed the feeling, the more expansive the feeling is, the more inclusive it is of things, of creating things here.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
but we get so lost on, because this is what we do. I have to have this kind of house. I have to live here. I have to do this for my children. I have to do this for my spouse. I have to I have to make this much money to be happy. I have to have,
Right.
yeah, I have to have this. I have to have that. And it's almost like, building the anthill. It's just like backwards. It's like doing everything backwards, because we're starting
Right.
with all the little grains of sand instead of taking a shovel and just with the energy pushing it all through.
Right. It's like backing into your creation instead of and just hoping that it'll turn out the way you want. And then, you get your expectations all wrapped up in that. And I mean, all of that really does misfocus our energy and leave us feeling drained and unfulfilled.
Yeah. So Laurel says, well, I'm doing a vision board like you're talking about. Is it endpoint creation? Seems like a limitation versus redefining creation point or starting point or whatever. Like, why do we even have to define?
Right.
How about the presence point?
Right.
The desired presence point.
Michael says, sometimes I question where these have tos come from. It's like I feel anxious if I'm not on track with these have tos.
Yeah.
Oh, and Laurel says that was my point.
I got that. That's what I was saying. Yes. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, and that's the whole thing, Michael. That's where all the have to's, because it's like, I have to have this, I have to have this, I have to have this kind of car, this kind of house, I have to live here, I have to live with this person or these people, I have to support this, and and then our ego convinces us, oh no, this makes me a good person.
Right.
So this is where I'm supposed to stay. This is what I'm supposed to do. Right. Okay.
Right. Well, and you froze or okay.
Yeah, you froze for a minute. Okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Or oh boy, I just lost that train of thought.
The have to.
Yeah, it creates expectations of you in other people. And rather than change that, you just take it on.
Yes. Yes. And then you say, okay, well, that's what makes me valuable. So it must be what I'm supposed to do. Because
Right.
supposed to, again, is ego. Because there's the ego says you're supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. The have to's and the can't. Yeah. And that's where it's where it trips us up, because I can't tell you how many conversations I have that go circular. They just go circular because it's
Right.
Okay, you want to change this. Okay, so then do this. Or why don't you consider this? Why don't you consider this? Oh, because I can't. And you give me 10 things, 10 reasons why I can't. Right? 10 reasons why I can't change my job, or 10 reasons why I can't move, or why I can't leave this relationship, or I can't change this part of my life. I have to do this for this person. I have to support my children. I have to blah, blah,
Well,
blah.
and those are only the ones that we're conscious of. There are a lot that are operating in our unconscious that we're totally unaware of.
What will people think of me?
Right. Or what will I think of myself?
Right. Well, and that's usually attached to what people will think of me, because we all depend so often on what other people think of us, is how we value ourselves. Right. So if you feel like, if I do this and everybody's going to think I'm an idiot, or everybody's going to think I'm crazy.
Right.
Then you start thinking, oh, well, maybe I am like off my rocker. Right. I mean, that's what happens. We start thinking that because we give credence to what other people think, instead of realizing that, like I said, whenever I've had the situations where that guidance has come and I've just done it, and I didn't care. Honestly, I didn't care what other people thought.
Right. Well, and that was doing it for yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. And that makes it so much clearer. But, I even back when I left upstate New York, and I was like in the last trimester of my pregnancy, that was just the whole, like, I always use this as a great example, because it was so illogical at the time.
Right.
Because I was in the last trimester of my first pregnancy. My husband was getting out of the military. I was going to be supporting us for a while. I had a good solid job and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And I got this voice that said, it's time to go. and he was down in Virginia and I was up in New York. Like he had been off, in a ship for the last 2 years in the Navy. And he was getting out in a couple months. And I'm like in the last trimester, well, at the time I was in my second trimester. And I'm like, yeah, no. And it was like, it's time to go south. Right. And so
Right.
I ended up picking up, and there were a couple of things that just sort of kept on pinging me. And I was like, yeah, because I'm going to end up in Minnesota or Texas, which is, I didn't want to go either place. Sorry, but
I understand. Once you get here, it's hard to get out.
those are the two choices I saw coming for me in my job. And I was just like, yeah, no. And it just didn't feel right. It felt like it was getting clunky, and it was just go. Because we had talked about eventually moving to Virginia, North Carolina, after all these decisions and all that kind of stuff. And literally my husband was out to sea. I never asked him. I literally wrote him a letter, because at the time we didn't have email, right? I wrote him a letter out to sea, and I said, guess what? I'm quitting my job. I'm looking for an apartment. I will be there when you pull in. No, like, what do you think? I just did it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm quitting the job that's supposed to support us after you get out in a couple of months, that kind of thing. But so I'm not sure which side of us is freezing, because one of us.
Yeah, I don't know.
So anyway, but I just did it, and it was like I never looked back, because you know what? Everything fell into place within a year. It was a year that was a little. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think I froze for a second, but I'm back.
Yeah. So I mean, it was not really clunky. I mean, because what happened was I quit my job, and when I quit my job, they said, "Oh no, you can't leave us yet." They gave me a year contract for more money as an independent consultant, full time, for more money than I was making, a lot more money than I was making, and I was like able to live in Virginia and do the job, and it was great. And I would have never ever have anticipated that was going to happen, right?
Right.
And then it like all fell into place. And, like we were both looking for jobs, and the baby was born. And, like we landed here because it was like wherever one of us gets a job or the other one could conceivably get a job, that's where we go. We ended up here because my husband got a job. We moved down here. My contract was up in 3 months. And within 2 weeks of my contract being up, I had 2 job offers, and it just all fell into place.
Right. But you didn't think about that when you followed that guidance.
No, I just did it. And people were like, are you crazy? Like, you're going to have a baby. What are you going to do? He's going to get out of the military. You're like, you're moving, you're leaving your job. And then it was just like, well, I'm just going. It's time to go.
Right.
And I basically think back, and my answer was always, I'll figure it out. I always do.
Right. Right.
Or really, it's really, no, the universe figures it out for me. And it just
let the universe figure it out for me.
Yes. I'm going to let the universe figure it out for me. I'm going to hold that space. I'm going to allow that energy to manifest and see what it looks like here.
Right.
Now I look back on it, and of course, after you have kids and then you're going in through it, and I look back and go, God, that was crazy. But look at how it worked out.
Right.
So, and every time I've had this, and it's never been small for me. When it's like, when it's do this, and don't question. It's always worked out. And then I still question the littler things.
Right. Well, and there's things in the moment too to pay attention to that contribute to the bigger things. But I mean, just day to day and minute to minute, there's always that guidance, which we talk about in that class. But it's the more we get in tune with ourselves, and the more we identify where we're spending our energy to see if we're treading water or if we're going with the flow, we can get such a better gauge of our ability to listen to what's going on and our guidance. And I think that's a great first step. to get you more in tuned, so that when those big messages come in, that it's clear, it's obvious, it's, yeah, I need to do this. But I think by looking at where we're spending our energy, back to that being tired, what is tiring me out? What's exhausting me?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because we'll sit there and go, oh, well, I just did these 50 things to juggle all of these balls, right? I just don't have the time to look at this change. I'm too
Right.
tired. And
Right.
so then we think that it's the change that makes us tired, but we're like, wait, but why do you usually get tired? Is because of all the stuff you've expended. Instead of looking behind you, you're looking in front of you again.
Right.
And so, I mean, and that's something that actually my husband and I have been talking about a lot lately, is we have a lot of things that we juggle that we know just don't fit anymore.
Right. And it's deciding when and how to let that go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes just looking at it that way, and understanding that you're in a position to where you're going to decide to how to let it go, it just lets go.
Yeah. Well, that's always the hope.
Right.
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 Yes, it does happen sometimes. It does. Right now, I feel like collectively and individually, we have such deep things that we are, it's like, so when we are so into these deeper things, which is what I feel like we're into, we can really,
Right.
truly create blindness around them within ourselves. Right.
I agree. I agree.
So many will say, then how do I see it? And I will say, like, and so these are the things that I look at is, what are the things that I would be horrified if they were taken away from me in my reality?
Yeah. What are the things I believe I can't do without?
Yeah. That would just crush me.
Right.
Because that's where it hides. Right. So if you think about my children not loving me, my children deserting me, my marriage being over, my, like, me not being able to support myself.
Yeah.
These are the standard things that come up for
Having
people.
nowhere to live.
Having nowhere to live, having nobody love me, right? That's one that's big for people. Like, and I have dragged others through that, because I'm like, okay, let's just look at, and we call it the worst case scenario. So look at the worst case scenario.
Right.
Let's look at
Right.
the worst case scenario. What are you afraid
Right.
of the most? Right. And again, you can call it, what are you afraid of the most? What do you feel like you can't live without? What do you feel like is your worst nightmare? Your
Yeah.
worst
What do you fear the most? Right.
Yeah, what do you feel
Yeah.
fear manifesting the most? Because when we look at them, we do, like you're saying, as soon as we look at them, we shift the energy, right? So sometimes
Mhm.
do they come to pass? Absolutely. And then what happens is we realize, oh, well, that wasn't as bad, even close to as bad as I thought it was going to be. And
Right.
now that I have released the energy that fought it so hard and tried to hold that wall in place that prevented that change, I feel so much better now. Oh my
Well,
God.
because actually in holding it at bay, you're actually feeding it.
Yes. And it's having more and more power and taking more and more energy and tiring you out more and more.
Right.
Right.
Which takes away from your focus ability on change and things that you actually desire to
Yes.
create.
Yes. And when we go through things like, think about how many people are chronically tired right now.
Right.
Why do you think that is? Oh, yeah, we can call it whatever we want to call it. But at the end of the day, we are putting so much energy to things that don't serve us, that we're just exhausting ourselves to avoid looking in the mirror of why we believe we have to hold those things in place.
Right. Yes. And we're also collectively holding up belief systems and
Collective ones that are huge and hugely
right, that
outdated.
no longer serve us at
Yes.
all.
Yes.
At all. And are attempting to fall apart, and we're expending more and more collective energy to try to hold it together. And it will eventually get to the point where there is no amount of energy to hold it together.
Yeah. Well, and that's the explosion we talk about.
Right.
So, and it's not a threat to say that, it sounds sort of threatening to say, oh, but you're going to have the explosion. It's just an inevitability of, I just know personally, this is what happens because I've seen it
Right.
for many, many, many people. And I've seen it for myself, even in things that I thought I was conscious about, or that I was, allowing and stuff like that, the explosions happen. And sometimes really the explosions are such a relief afterward. I mean, it's just like, oh, thank goodness. It's like,
Right.
what was it we were talking about that one time you and I did a private share together, and it was like seeing like the boils, like the zits. This is pretty gross and nasty.
And then once it pops,
But
it's
once
like,
it
oh, that's
pops,
so
you
much
get all-
better.
well, you can't get the pus out. You got to it's got to come out, right? So you got to clear it out. So when it comes out and it pops and it's gross, but then it heals. Then it heals a lot faster. It takes a whole lot longer to heal if you just let it fester, and then you're just like, pussyfooting around it kind of thing.
Right.
But it's really, it's gross as that is, it's a real good analogy to a really good, powerful analogy to what happens when we say, okay, I will look at this. What if I allow this change? And you don't have to just jump in and change it all at once. It's like, what if I allow this piece to change? Right? How does that feel like?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, and you can ask for clarity on what is it that will help me facilitate this change in the most graceful and easy manner, which might not be as graceful and easy as the ego might think, but if it helps you get to that end, to that ultimate destination, right, of what you desire to manifest here, right, your creation intention, then if we say, okay, so if I allow that and I open my heart and allow all possibility, I have to open my heart and allow all possibility. Well, let me do it in a way that I can, find it in, the pieces that will allow it to simply let go, right? Like the puzzle pieces in the way, and then don't judge what gets put in front of you, but say, let me break it down a piece at a time, a bite-sized piece.
Bite-sized, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's so much easier to nibble away at something than to just look at it as the whole big picture.
And sometimes we decide, okay, I'm just going to change the whole thing, right?
Right. Dive right in.
But most of the time it's like, okay, but if I do this a little bit, and at some point we might get to a certain point of nibbling away at it. And then all of a sudden you get the energy of, okay, now let it all go. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Because you got all the stuff away that would cause like a lot, a lot of fuss and challenge. Right. So, we are the ones who keep ourselves in that cage.
We are. Absolutely. We create the cage. We willingly go in the cage. We shut the door behind us or not.
Well, and then we don't even shut the door half the time. The door is wide open and we're crying, I want out of this cage. I want out of this cage. What's that song? I can't, that song, how many times we've, we don't even realize we have the key. We want to, like loose ourselves from the chains that we only have. Yeah. We don't realize we have the, you think of that song.
Right. I don't know. I don't know which song. It sounds familiar.
I know if I got the lyrics right off the top of my head. It's pretty close. But anyway, how many times we live our lives in chains, but never even know we hold the key, right? That's
Yep. That's it.
Right. That's really what this is about, is letting go of all of the chains. And the chains are the things that we fight to change because we get used to them. They feel comfortable. We feel sexy in them. We love our chains.
And it's like, well, I can't leave this. I just redecorated this.
Exactly. I just redecorated the dungeon here.
Right.
Why would I? Yeah. I got a better set. I got a stronger set of chains now. They're steel.
Right. Well, and it's like we see it as we've invested in them.
Yes.
And we've expended a lot of our energies in that. And it's,
well, then we judge ourselves after, like, because then we get caught in the in-between of, oh, but if I actually let go of all this, then I'm going to have to judge myself for putting all my energy into that. Right.
Well, and then the ego says, but these chains,
Yes.
There could be worse chains out
right.
there.
Yes. They're so much heavier and so much harder to bear. Or you could be even
Right.
more limited, right?
Right.
Instead of saying, if I actually shifted this, I might not have chains at all. Like, or if I, or, and look at how easy that would be. And sometimes I think we're more afraid of that even so, because then we're like, well, then that's the whole, like, we're not afraid of how powerless we are. We're afraid of the power we have. Cause then we think, oh, well, what fun would that be? Like, and we
Right.
laugh about saying that, but it's true.
It is true. It is very true. Absolutely.
Oh, what fun would that be? With that show that you and I are both
What would I
watching.
do all day long?
Yeah. Well, look at that show but you and I are both watching, the 9 Perfect Strangers. Is that what-
Strangers.
yeah.
9 Perfect Strangers,
For
right?
some reason, I can never remember the name of it. And my husband and Scott laughs at me about it all the time because I'm like, it's like, I don't know, I come up with weird things. I'm like, okay, 9 Perfect Strangers. Where the one guy you find out, like, and he has like no emotion and you can tell he's just not happy, but he has everything. And then you find out he won the lottery.
Right. Right.
And you're
Yep.
thinking, oh, and everybody's looking at him like, and he's like, well, yeah, no, I have no meaning. Now nothing has any
Right.
meaning, which
Right.
is interesting. Like, we believe those things. If things were too easy, that they'd have no meaning for us.
Right. We wouldn't have to strive for anything. We wouldn't have,
Right.
we wouldn't appreciate things.
Well, and there's the whole martyrdom syndrome and the suffering, the human condition and
Right.
all that stuff we've romanticized, and that starts to then crumble when we
Right.
realize, oh, I don't need this. I can play in it and not be in it and not of it. Right.
Right. Yep.
So where do we start? That's the question. Where do we start for a clearing for today?
Well, I like the somewhere we should include in it allowing all possibilities, because I do think that that's key. But if we, I always like to start with just becoming aware.
Allowing ourselves to be aware of those things that are to change so we can
Allow all possibilities.
allow the manifestation of what we desire to create from a feeling and energy perspective. Oh yeah, that feels good. That's that whole going back to what we we're talking about, the vision board thing.
Vision board, right?
Yeah. So, and what does it come down to? Most of us, really, it just comes down to living our happiness.
Right. Yes. And knowing what that is.
That's what I was going to say is next. And the biggest challenge is many times we don't really know what that is because we think it's going to be this.
Right.
We think it's going to be, money and this kind of job and this kind of recognition and this kind of house and this kind of family and this kind of car and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, those are just things.
Those are just consequences of
Right.
getting to that place.
Yes. So, or not, because you know what? Many of us would be happy in little tiny homes.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter. Like, whatever it is, in a way that you wake up in the morning and you are in bliss with everything you do.
Right.
That's all that matters. Like with me, I could love like living by some tropical waters where there are fish. I could go scuba diving every day.
Well, and then that's out the front door, and out the back door are the mountains.
Yes, exactly.
Why not?
Of course. Or go hiking and have beautiful views and all kinds of stuff. Yes. All kinds of nature and just connection. And just think about that. That energy is just clear and happiness and bliss and support. Right. So however that manifests, just let it be. So yeah, I think having awareness, actually, maybe even backing up to a place of having an awareness of what our true happiness is, right?
Right.
Right. And then awareness of what we are allowing from the ego to block us, prevent us from actually
standing in the way.
exist, yeah, that are standing in the way for us to actually do that. And then whatever energy there is for us so that we commit ourselves to letting go and allowing and opening our heart to all those possibilities and really opening our heart to all the possibilities, really, and allowing.
Yeah.
Because that's where we hold ourselves back. Because we're
it
like,
is.
I want this, and this to me has to look like this. And in looking like this, here are all the conditions it has to fall into. And that's what we do. The ego says, oh, let's control this. Now, come on. It can be scary if we don't control it. Because
Right.
it can go wrong. Right. So if we let go and trust, again, shameless self plug, you could go to our Adventures in Wonderland program, which covers worthiness, trust, guidance,
Self-responsibility.
forgiveness, self-responsibility, which is about to launch this week, and shadow, which is exciting because that's our October one. That's gonna be, I think, my favorite one. And then self-love and self-nourishment all connects into all of this.
Right.
And it's all the things that we hold that prevent us from really allowing that existence. But in the meantime, we're doing this clearing to allow this possibility to even open up for ourselves. And to open our heart to all possibility, to know what that is and allow it with trust and love and the ability to listen to the guide, the real true guidance, and not the ego going the but.
Right.
And whatever, all the other stuff we said. I feel like I'm already going out there. So
I know.
all right.
So let's just do it.
Let's just do it. So as we always do, everybody take a deep breath, close your eyes, open your heart. As we step out of separation, back into oneness and hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we create, exist, and experience. All right. Oh, that one I'm going to go sit in for a while today. That felt
Yeah.
that felt very buttery, yummy.
Yeah. I thought in the beginning, it was like, when you get in your car in the wintertime and it's all frosted over. And
Mhm.
it's like you turn up the defroster and you have your windshield wipers going. And
Right,
it's
right.
like,
Yeah.
how it starts with that one little hole.
Yeah, yeah. And then it
And then
starts
it
to,
starts getting bigger and the wiper goes by and then it's a bigger hole. Well, that's what I felt like looking at all the things that are distracting me, preventing me from seeing what I really want,
yeah.
and how, you know, just all that effort went into creating that frost, and just start with that little hole of recognition of, no, there's more than just right here. That
Yes.
was really, really nice.
Yeah. I saw it. That is really nice. I saw it as I was sitting in a room that had all these boxes that were like marked, and now they were marked, but they were still boxes, right? So things were all packed up in these boxes. And I was still feeling claustrophobic because the boxes were still there.
Right.
And basically it was that kind of thing of, like when sometimes after you move, like it takes a while to get all the boxes unpacked or whatever. And it was like, okay, you got this room of boxes left. So either open them up, go through what's in them, or toss them. Right. And so I was like, is this me or the collective? And it was like, oh, both, very much both.
If you have to ask, it's both.
Yes. And I was like, okay, so then can I just throw some out, the whole box, without looking in what's in it? And it was like, of course you can. That's your choice. It's how much do you trust?
Right.
But it's the whole idea of, like, some people say, like, if I have something in a box that's been in a box for more than a year,
I don't need it.
I don't need it. Right.
Right.
And so that's what I sort of got was, okay, so go and look at all that. And so we do that with emotions and things we hold on to. And it's like, okay, have you had it in a box sitting there for more than a year? Well, then let it go,
Right. Oh, that's a great analogy, especially with, the baggage that we supposedly
Yes.
carry along with us. It's
Yeah.
like,
And so I was like, oh, that feels really good. I'm going to come back to this.
yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a nice little cleansing thing to do this week. This is actually I think this is a really powerful exercise for all of us to do.
Right.
Really look at these things. And I mean, because once we look at them, they don't hold power over us anymore. We can start to shift that.
Right.
So on that, we're going to let you go. That's
Awesome.
all for this week. This is Angela Coulter, and
There's Sieg Avignoni.
we'll see you next time on Ascended World. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.